Hey guys, welcome to an interesting video on Wild Rift. So they are back with the tier list for patch 3.0a. So first up at the start, of course, this is all simply my own opinion, so you can feel free to disagree. Put what you think in the comments below. And it's also, of course, for solo queue, so if it's duo queue, it's different. For example, Jinx would be a lot higher if you duo with a Lulu, just for example. So, without further ado, we're not going to waste too much time. We're just going to quickly cover pretty much everything, because not too much has changed since patch 3.0. So I'm not going to cover every single pick, but we're just going to highlight what we want to highlight. Basically, Fiora still the best top lane champion, still very, very strong. Renekton up there as well. Jace caught a couple of nerfs, but nothing too major. I still think he's S plus tier in my opinion. The 6 base AD as well as like the empowered shock blast nerf, honestly I don't think it's too bad. Hammer From is untouched, so I still think he's really, really good. Set got nerfed, but I still think he is pretty top tier, so he's at the top of S tier. Riven close behind, really underrated. Wukong really underrated as well with his huge ultimate. And Camille at the very bottom of S tier. Now I was considering dropping Camille to A tier, but just thinking about it, if you are a good Camille, you will still be like an S tier champion. Maybe not like an S plus tier champion, maybe not a high tier S champion, but a good Camille will still make Camille feel broken. So despite her reduction in ult damage, despite the reduction in percentage health damage on her W, I still think Camille is really good. Now, other things to highlight, Jax I do think is A plus tier. I think he's doing really well in the Baron lane, which I do feel is his better position, and that's pretty much all we gotta discuss with the Baron lane. The rest stayed the same except for Kayle, who dropped all the way down to C tier. Now Kayle, after she got those nerfs, I did think it would affect her quite a bit, but it hit her like a truck, and now Kayle isn't even banned anymore. No one really cares about Kayle anymore, which I kind of feel sort of has to be the spot that Kayle is in, because if Kayle is good, she's the best scaling champion in the game, and pretty much she will just destroy everyone when she reaches a certain point in the game. So Kayle all the way down in the C tier, but I still probably pick Kayle over like a Nasus. It's probably like more hyper carry oriented. So yeah, so now we're gonna move on to talking about the jungle. Alright, so the jungle, not too many changes as well. As a matter of fact, not a lot of roles have had a lot of changes. So anyways, Lee Sin got the 2-second nerf on his W. He is still up there. Kha'Zix untouched. He is still up there as well. Rengar also still up there. Now, I'm going to discuss something really, I guess you could say interesting about the jungle, which is the fact that Fiora, Riven, Jace, and Sett, who are traditionally not junglers, are in the upper echelons as the jungle. As a matter of fact, I think Fiora and Riven are the 4th and 5th best jungle champions respectively. And I feel that the reason why these 4 champions are really good in the jungle is just because they themselves as a champion is just simply very strong. And if you really think about it, in Wild Rift anybody can jungle. You just need to have a decent first clear. So logically, champions who are stronger just natively will be good junglers as well, so long as they can clear the jungle alright. So I think that actually Fiora, Riven, Jace, and Sett shouldn't even be in the jungle tier list. They shouldn't even be junglers, but they are because of how strong the champion itself is. So there's actually a very simple way to nerf them out of the jungle, which is just to reduce their damage to jungle monsters. Like for example, let's say Fiora auto attacks do like half damage to monsters, or like her Q lunge does like, let's say, 25% damage to monsters or something. It's really easy to nerf them out of the jungle, but just that Riot didn't actually choose to actually physically nerf them out of the jungle. So that's a point I want to put out there at the start of discussing jungle. So Pantheon, top tier jungler in my opinion. Pantheon really strong, can snowball games really well. He's a very insane early game jungler. I think jungle is his better role compared to Baron lane, because he can impact the entire map of the game. Evelynn is actually the I think it's like the only champion that actually moved up in the jungle tier list, because I've seen a lot of Evelynn becoming very popular recently, and because of that, she is actually not that bad. Like last time, she used to be completely broken, completely OP because she could steal dragons. She did too much damage, etc. But now she's actually still really good. Just that she's not completely broken anymore, but she's still top tier. And of course, really good tank jungler Nunu, and really good teamfight jungle Wukong, whose clear is a little bit slow. Now Set top of the A tier, as you know, his jungle clear just got nerfed in terms of his Q. His damage got halved to monsters, but aside from his clear, Set still just a very very strong champion, which is why he's all the way up there. And yeah, so Camille's nerfs didn't affect her too badly for the jungle. Probably affected her Baron lane a lot more. She's still A plus tier in the jungle, and Jax also A plus tier in the jungle. You can really hyper carry with Jax in the jungle, but just I think him in the Baron lane is better. Morgana, your only other AP option other than Evelynn, so she does have to rank pretty high up. And now, something I want to briefly discuss is Rammus. Rammus, I place him in the B tier. However, I think he could possibly be sleeper OP because now in a very heavy AD meta at the moment, very often you see an AD mid, for example Zed, you see an AD slash tank top, like maybe let's say a Malphite or a Darius or a Garen or something. Then you have an ADC who's normally AD as well, and you also have like a support which normally is not a like carry support. Like unless you're playing AP Brand, Seraphine, or Lux, generally it's either an enchanter or a tank support. So sometimes the team doesn't have any AP at all. So Rammus could be sleeper OP. I'm just putting that out there. I still don't think he is, but he could be in this current meta. And the only other change is that Kayle in the jungle is all the way D tier. Now, as we all know, Kayle at the moment is trash in terms of her damage and her defense. So she has to hit level 15, 3 items at least to even be useful. And being the jungler, you have to be there at objectives fights, unless you plan to give up the first 2 dragons and the first 2 heralds to the enemy team, which obviously is horrible in itself. You're gonna have to be there, you're exposed, and you're going to die most likely. So Kayle, the worst jungler in the game, and I still see like 1 or 2 people play Kayle jungle, so don't do that. So now we can move on to talking about the mid lane. Alright, so into the mid lane. Now, first up, I want to discuss the elephant in the room, which is Katarina. Now, I still have her at the S tier, and in the exact same position I had her in my last tier list. And the reason I didn't even move her is because I don't think a 20% AP in her ultimate is going to shoot her up to God tier or something like that. Now, a lot of people have thought that that is the case, but in all honesty, I think that Katarina's main damage comes from her veracity, her spin, and her Q and her E. Her ultimate is not her main form of damage in the first place. Now, of course, having more ultimate damage is going to make her obviously have more damage overall. But I think Katarina still has the same problems of a high skill floor and a high skill ceiling, and also a very large amount of CC in the current meta, which makes her very difficult to play. So, basically, I think Katarina is going to be good for people who are good at her and good into certain team comps, but I don't think she is S plus tier because simply, even if you're the best Katarina player in the world, if you're against, like, let's say there's a Pantheon, there's a Set top, a Pantheon jungle, a Vayne ADC, and like a Rammus in the jungle. They have like 4 point and click CCs, and there's nothing you can do about it. So there's no way that you're gonna be able to like 1v5 carry unless the entire enemy team is stupid and uses their point and click CC on somebody other than you. But aside from that, there's no way you're gonna carry in that kind of versus that kind of team composition. So I still maintain Katarina will not be S plus. She's in the S tier. Now, who is in the S plus tier? Zed, I believe, is still super duper broken. Picked a lot less nowadays, but I still think he's super duper strong. He didn't catch any nerfs. In fact, his Edge of Night did catch a nerf, but Youmuu's did get a buff. So Zed normally builds both of those, so he's in good shape. Galio still up there just because of how much AP there is, especially in the mid lane. You see Ziggs, Diana, Orianna, Katarina, all AP. Corki AP. He counters all of them, and building tank Galio is he still does decent damage. Building damage Galio, he still is a decent tank, so he's just a really good champion overall. So Ziggs, of course, he's still really good in terms of damage. Diana actually moved up because I think she's actually more impactful than I gave her credit for. And Orianna is still a late game hyper carry not hyper carry, but late games carry when you get to like 3 items. She's gonna do insane damage with her QW combo, and her ult just destroys enemy teams if they bunch up together. Corki, I still believe, is very underrated. I still think he's a very hard carry champion because I do play Corki a lot in both mid and ADC. I think he's really strong. Jace caught a couple of nerfs, as we all know, but he's still very strong as a champion, so still in the S tier. Now in the A tier, in the A plus tier and below, nothing much has changed. I'm gonna briefly discuss Morgana, who they nerfed from the mid lane. In the first place, I already had her at the top of B tier, and she's not so trash that she's Aurelion Soul tier. So you know, we still have her at the top of B tier. No changes to Morgana in terms of the tier list. So now I'm gonna talk about ADCs. Alright, so now ADC's tier list looking a little bit longish because we have an APC tier list at the bottom part. But I've only made one change, which is Caitlyn. So Caitlyn moves up from A plus to S tier because I do, after playing her a lot more, I do think that she can be very oppressive against the correct champions, and you really can't do anything against her in that scenario. But it does remain a fact that she has very low mobility and she's very squishy, like lowest health in the game, maybe only comparable to Kayle. So she's really easy to kill, but you know, really oppressive and a lot of damage output. So Draven did get a buff on his ultimate by 20%, and I have playtested Draven, and I do feel that gives his ultimate a lot more damage, and 20% AD nothing to scoff at. It really does give him a lot more damage. So Draven still in the S plus tier. Now I would like to point out that much like Katarina, I already had Draven in the S plus tier before his buff, and even more so now with his buff. So Kai'Sa and Lucian, I believe, are the two best ADCs. Kai'Sa is such a amazing hyper carry when you reach like 2 or 3 items. She's just insane. Lucian, same deal. He does so much damage. When you get to like 3 or 4 items, like just one like E auto with your passive will like half health any target that's not tanky. Doesn't even have to be a squishy target. Like as long as they're not a tank, they pretty much get half health. So yeah, the rest of the tier list pretty much remains the same. The Senna in A plus is the fasting one, and the one in bottom of B is the farming one. In the APC tier list, nothing has changed. Ziggs and Corki still the best. Orianna close behind, and the two worser options to pick are Veigar and Brand. Although I'm still trying to play them to possibly get a video out on them, but we'll see how it goes. So with that, we can discuss supports. Alright, so here is the support tier list. Obviously, we have the addition of Yuumi in the S plus tier. Now, but before we discuss Yuumi, I'm going to briefly discuss Sett support, which I have not seen a single time being played in my games, which is why I don't have him on the support tier list, but I do know that he is viable in support. But until I see it and play against it or with it at least a couple of times, I can't rate him because I haven't actually seen it. So I believe that the top supports are still Nami and Lulu, really good enchanters. Thresh, the best playmaking support in the business. And Yuumi, now the support tier list, even though I do order them from left to right for all the tier lists, but the support tier list, Nami, Lulu, Thresh, and Yuumi are all at about the same standard, so it isn't really ranked from left to right. Yuumi, not too strong in the laning phase unless you're against a poke composition. Like playing Ezreal into a Yuumi lane is just, you know, asking for trouble because Yuumi just out heals all your poke. And she can only really be punished when she dismounts to try to proc her passive. But aside from that, Yuumi in lane is really safe as long as you're not into an all-in lane. Now, Yuumi's main weakness in terms of laning phase is all-in lanes like Lucian or like Draven, for example. So she's kind of weak against that because she can't out-heal the burst damage. But versus any kind of like poke lane or DPS lane, like versus a Caitlyn lane or versus like a Ezreal lane, she does pretty well against. And the main problem with Yuumi is that pretty much she enhances one person to the moon. Like it could be your Vayne, but it could also be your top lane. It could be like a Sett or a Darius that just can't die because of Yuumi giving them extra sets, giving them heals and speed ups and all that. So Yuumi is just too big of a threat just because of how she can make any champion on a team so strong. Even if you're not fed, or as long as they're not like feeding or anything, Yuumi just makes them way too good. So yeah, personally I ban Yuumi, and I'm gonna come up with a best bans video really soon, so stay tuned for that. And the rest of the support tier list pretty much remains the same. Now I would like to point out Soraka and the A plus tier. I still think she's really strong when you pair it with like a Kai'Sa or like a Vayne, some kind of hyper carry sort of ADC. And the only other change is Lux, who I moved up from the A to the A plus tier because I have played with a couple of games with an AP Lux, and I think AP Lux and AP Seraphine are the way to go because building them support honestly doesn't really get you that much, but building them as a carry style support with AP is a lot better way to build them, and I do think AP Lux does do pretty well actually. So the rest, A tier, pretty much just the rest of the engaged supports that are serviceable. B and below obviously I wouldn't really pick them as support. I do actually still see like a lot of Malphite and Pantheon supports for some reason. I don't think they're good at all. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the tier list for patch 3.0a. So thank you guys for watching the video and goodbye.